The black tattoo artist, the Mafia boss, hides from the world and treasures her like a queen in private. Snow pressed against the massive window of a top-floor studio in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood, the city lights blurred by the storm. Diane J. Kemper stood near her workstation, arms crossed, dressed entirely in black. Tattoos climbed her arms, each line precise, her copper-toned skin glowing in the soft studio light. Her natural hair was pulled back, exposing the sharp angles of her face, her expression unreadable. Across from her, Vincent J. Wright, early 40s with gray at his temples and scars on his hands, faced her. He wore dark clothing without any markings, controlled and deliberate. "I am losing my mind, Diane, and I don't know how to stop it." The words hit the room like ice. Vincent, the man who controlled Chicago's underworld, was confessing a weakness he never allowed himself to show. Diane had a rule she never broke: no attachments with clients. He had a rule he never broke: never show vulnerability. Now, both rules hung on the edge of breaking. How does a woman who trusts no one become the hidden treasure of the man who controls everything? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below, and subscribe to catch tomorrow's story. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. A special shout out to all our viewers, both new and returning, from the United States, Canada, Netherlands, South Africa, Australia, the United Kingdom, and every corner of the world. Thank you for being here and supporting these stories. You're the reason we keep creating them. Let's begin. Diane J. Kemper's studio sat on the top floor of a converted warehouse in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood, hidden above a record shop that had been there longer than most people could remember. The building had no sign, no listing, no online presence beyond a phone number that changed every year. To reach her space, clients had to use a freight elevator that required a code she updated monthly. Those who forgot it did not get a second chance. Inside, the studio felt intentional rather than decorative. Exposed brick walls carried the weight of the building's history. Vintage leather chairs sat low and worn, chosen for comfort rather than appearance. Amber-toned lamps softened the room, warming the space without drawing attention to themselves. Stainless steel workstations stayed spotless, every tool arranged with precision. A massive window stretched across one wall, overlooking the Chicago skyline, the Willis Tower standing steady in the distance like a quiet witness to everything below. This space was not designed to impress. It was designed to protect. Diane had built it over 7 years, one careful decision at a time. She never advertised. No social media. No website gallery. Her reputation traveled through whispered conversations, private recommendations, and discreet referrals. People with money, power, and secrets found her because someone they trusted had already sat in her chair. Clients flew in from Los Angeles, Miami, New York, and overseas. They waited months for appointments without complaint. They paid whatever she asked, in cash or wire transfers that left no questions behind. She did not negotiate. She did not rush. And she did not explain herself. Her body served as her portfolio. Intricate designs wrapped her arms, traced her collarbone, disappeared beneath fabric, and reappeared where skin met air. Every piece told a story. No one ever heard those stories. Not because she was mysterious, but because she believed meaning lost its power once it was spoken aloud. There was one rule Diane never broke. No relationships with clients. No friendships. No favors. No late-night conversations that drifted beyond the work. They came for her skill. She gave them her full attention. They paid. They left. The transaction remained clean, professional, and contained. That rule had saved her more than once. Diane learned the cost of blurred lines early in life. She grew up on Chicago's South Side, near the remains of the Robert Taylor homes, where sirens were part of the background and absence often explained more than words ever could. Her father had been present one year and gone the next, pulled into violence tied to people whose names were spoken only in lowered voices. No funeral. No closure. Just silence that settled into their home and stayed. Her mother worked until her body could not keep up anymore. Cleaning houses in Winnetka for families who treated her like furniture. Useful, replaceable, and unnamed. 17 years of early mornings, long commutes, and aching joints ended in a kitchen that was not her own. A heart that gave out without warning. A woman who died surrounded by someone else's wealth. Diane was 21 when she buried her mother and decided that dependence was a risk she would never take. In her 20s, she tried connection anyway. Men who admired her strength but wanted to soften it. Men who praised her independence until it became inconvenient. Each relationship followed the same pattern. At first, she was herself. Then, slowly, she adjusted. Quieted certain parts. Explained less. Smiled more when she didn't feel like it. One day she realized she no longer recognized her own reflection. After the last one ended, she stopped trying. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. If intimacy required her to disappear, it was not worth the cost. From that point forward, her life became carefully structured. Her work thrived. Her solitude felt intentional. On a cold December night, her final client of the evening gathered her coat and scarf in silence. A retired federal judge from Milwaukee, visiting every few months without questions or conversation. The woman left an envelope on the table, nodded once, and stepped into the elevator without looking back. Diane locked the door behind her, began cleaning her equipment, and prepared to close for the night. Her phone vibrated against the steel countertop. Unknown number. A single message waited on the screen. Tomorrow night. 10 p.m. I need a consultation. Referral from someone you worked with. Please. Her fingers hovered above the phone longer than they should have. She asked one question before putting it down. Who referred you? The reply came instantly. Anthony Marchetti. Diane felt the air leave her lungs. Anthony Marchetti had been dead for 3 months. Anthony Marchetti was not a name that could be spoken lightly. Not in Diane's studio. Not anywhere in her life. She had tattooed him 6 times over 4 years. He never rushed her. Never tried to charm her. Never asked personal questions. He paid in cash, tipped generously, and respected every boundary she set without complaint. In a world where men like him often treated artists as accessories, Anthony treated her like a professional. He was also very clear about what he was. When the news broke about his death, Diane had read the article once and closed it. A shooting outside a River North restaurant. No suspects. No follow-up. She did not attend any memorials. She did not reach out to anyone connected to him. She grieved privately, the way she did everything else. And now his name was glowing on her phone. She stared at the message, the studio suddenly feeling too quiet. The city outside her window moved as it always did, traffic lights blinking, snow beginning to gather along the edges of the streets. Nothing about the night suggested danger. That was what unsettled her most. Anthony's phone had been shut down after his death. She knew that for a fact. Which meant the person texting her had not taken the number. They had taken his memory. She typed slowly. Tomorrow. 10 p.m. Come alone. She did not add a greeting. She did not sign her name. Diane spent the rest of the night double-checking her security. The elevator code was changed. The back stairwell was locked. The studio alarm was tested twice. She slept lightly, waking before dawn with her mind already running through possibilities she did not like. By the following evening, snow covered the streets in uneven layers. Diane arrived early, not because she was anxious, but because preparation gave her control. She dressed in black as she always did, comfortable clothes that allowed movement without distraction. Her hair was pulled back tight. No jewelry. No softness she had not earned. At 9:58, the freight elevator began its slow climb. She did not look at the door as it opened. She listened instead. Measured footsteps. No rush. No hesitation. someone who moved like they belonged anywhere they stood. When he stepped into the studio, she finally turned. The man waiting for her was not what she expected. Early 40s. Tall. Lean rather than bulky. Gray beginning at his temples. His hands bore scars that told stories without explanation. He wore dark clothing with no markings, no visible signals of status or affiliation. He looked like someone who had learned how to disappear in plain sight. But she recognized him immediately. Vincent J. Wright. Men like him did not need introductions. His name traveled quietly through certain circles, always attached to caution. Power wrapped in respectability. Wealth that did not announce itself. Control exercised without spectacle. Diane did not ask him to sit. "I know who you are," she said calmly. "And I know Anthony Marchetti is dead." Vincent met her gaze without flinching. "Yes." "Then you also know I don't take clients under false pretenses." "I didn't come under false pretenses. I came with honesty." She folded her arms. "You came with someone else's name. He spoke highly of you. That doesn't explain why you're here." Vincent took a step farther into the room, stopping well short of her personal space. "Anthony kept a journal. I found it after his death. There was an entry about you." Diane felt something tighten in her chest, but she did not let it reach her face. "He described you as someone who couldn't be bought," Vincent continued. "Someone who took nothing she didn't earn. Someone who stayed untouched while working close to people like us." She studied him carefully now. Not just his words, but his posture. His breathing. The way he held still, like a man used to being assessed. "And what exactly are you hoping to find here?" she asked. "A design," he said. "One piece. Something that will take time. Something honest." She almost laughed. "Men with your kind of reach don't come to me for honesty. They come for control." "I'm not asking to control you." "That's what they all say." Vincent was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was steady, but lower. "I'm asking to understand something. Anthony believed you were different. I want to know why." Diane walked toward the window, the city lights reflecting faintly against the glass. "You're standing in a room built on rules," she said. "The most important one is that I don't cross lines for anyone. Not money. Not fear. Not curiosity. I respect that." Respect is easy to say. "I've already come alone." She turned back to him. He was right. No driver. No security. No phone in his hand. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Diane spoke. "If this goes forward, it happens on my terms. You come alone. You don't ask about my other clients. And whatever weakness you bring into this room stays here." Vincent nodded once. Agreed. She extended her hand. He took it. The contact was brief, professional, and final. Neither of them acknowledged the shift it caused. Outside, the snow continued to fall, settling over Chicago as two lives edged closer to a collision neither of them had planned. Vincent J. Wright controlled his world from the 30th floor of a glass tower in the Loop, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Millennium Park and Lake Michigan stretched out like an unclaimed promise. The office belonged to Wright Capital Partners, a private equity firm known for aggressive acquisitions and generous charitable donations. On paper, Vincent specialized in distressed assets and strategic turnarounds. In practice, he specialized in leverage. His name appeared on donor walls at the Art Institute. He attended black-tie fundraisers without missing a beat, speaking calmly with mayors, senators, and board members who saw him as disciplined, reliable, and discreet. He never drank too much. Never spoke out of turn. Never stayed late enough to be remembered for the wrong reasons. People trusted him because nothing about him demanded attention. That restraint had been learned the hard way. Vincent grew up in Englewood, on blocks where ambition was a liability and hesitation could cost you everything. His mother cleaned houses in Kenilworth and Winnetka, taking buses before sunrise and returning after dark. During summers, she brought him along when she could not find childcare. He sat quietly on polished floors, watching families who spoke with confidence instead of caution. He noticed how they moved through rooms as if they belonged there. How they asked for things without apology. How their voices never rushed. Vincent studied them the way other boys studied sports highlights. By the time he was 16, he understood two truths. Money insulated people from consequence. And power rarely announced itself. He left poverty the long way. No scholarships. No miracles. Just a series of decisions that narrowed his options while expanding his reach. By 25, he was no longer worried about survival. By 35, he was no longer working alone. He never explained how it happened, and no one who benefited from it ever asked. Italian and Irish organizations sought his approval because Vincent solved problems without drawing attention. He negotiated routes through the ports of Gary, Indiana. He managed logistics through rural Illinois airfields few people knew existed. He kept violence efficient and limited, not out of mercy, but because chaos attracted interest. At 43, he controlled enough territory that saying no to him felt irresponsible. Yet for all of it, Vincent lived alone. No marriage. No children. No home filled with evidence of softness. Women entered his life through clear agreements. They were compensated well, protected thoroughly, and dismissed without confusion. Affection was permitted. Attachment was not. He believed this was discipline. Men like him did not love. They possessed. They provided. They defended. Anything deeper created leverage others could use against you. Vulnerability led to mistakes. Mistakes led to funerals. That belief had kept him alive. Until Anthony Marchetti died. Vincent found the journal in a locked drawer at Anthony's residence, tucked beneath financial records and legal documents that meant nothing to him. The book was small, unmarked, and worn from use. He almost discarded it without opening it. Instead, he read one entry. Anthony wrote about a tattoo artist named Diane. He described her studio as neutral ground. A place where nothing was taken unless it was earned. He wrote that she had walls higher than any system they had built, but something careful beneath them. Something she guarded fiercely. Anthony called her the only honest person he knew. The line stayed with Vincent longer than it should have. Honesty was not a word men like them used without irony. Vincent read the entry twice. Then again the following night. He told himself it was strategy. That anyone Anthony trusted deserved attention. That understanding her meant understanding a variable he did not yet account for. But curiosity pressed harder than logic. How did someone exist so close to his world without being consumed by it? Why had Anthony, a man who trusted no one fully, trusted her? For the first time in years, Vincent found himself wanting something without knowing how to obtain it. That discomfort became intolerable. On the night he decided to meet her, snow fell steadily across the city. Vincent dismissed his driver 2 blocks from the warehouse in Pilsen. He walked the rest of the way alone, coat collar turned up, hands ungloved despite the cold. No entourage. No security. No second chances. He entered the freight elevator, keyed in the code he had memorized, and rode upward in silence. For once, Vincent J. Wright stepped into a room where his reputation meant nothing. And that was exactly why he was there. Vincent did not sleep the night after meeting Diane. That alone unsettled him. He had faced indictments, betrayals, and negotiations where lives rested on his decisions, and still slept without interruption. Rest came from control. Control came from preparation. Yet her studio lingered in his mind with an unfamiliar weight, not because she challenged him, but because she did not adjust to him at all. He reviewed her background through channels he trusted. There was little to find. No arrests. No financial irregularities. No social footprint beyond the essentials. She paid her taxes, renewed her licenses on time. Her property was owned outright through a limited trust established years earlier. Clean. Too clean for someone who worked so close to his world. Vincent respected that. He returned to Anthony's journal, rereading the entry he had nearly discarded. Anthony had written about discipline, not mystery. About a woman who refused favors even when they were offered in ways most people would not refuse. He noted that she never asked for protection and never accepted gifts. Payment was payment. Nothing more. Vincent understood the kind of strength that required. He also understood how rare it was. At the office, his days continued as usual. Meetings ran on schedule. Deals closed. Donations were approved. His presence reassured rooms full of people who would never see the other side of him. From the outside, nothing shifted. Inside, something had. For the first time, Vincent questioned a belief he had lived by for decades. That people in his position could only exist through dominance. That intimacy always came with a cost. That solitude was safety. Diane's life contradicted that logic. She was not insulated by money or force. She stood alone, protected by rules she enforced without fear. She did not trade access for comfort. She did not soften her boundaries for influence. She survived without needing anyone to save her. That unsettled him more than any threat ever had. Vincent scheduled a second appointment, then a third. Each visit followed her terms. He arrived alone. He spoke only when necessary. He never asked personal questions. She worked with focus and precision, treating his skin like any other canvas. The silence between them was not awkward. It was intentional. He noticed things he rarely noticed about people. How she prepared her tools the same way every time. How she listened without interrupting. How her eyes never lingered where they did not belong. There was no performance in her presence. That absence of strategy made him feel exposed. Vincent realized he was being assessed as carefully as he assessed others. Not for weakness, but for consistency. She was measuring whether he respected her rules, not whether he impressed her. That realization brought an unfamiliar urge to prove himself. He resisted it. Instead, he complied. Weeks passed. Snow gave way to cold rain. The city shifted, but their rhythm held. The work progressed slowly, deliberately. Each session ended without ceremony. Each beginning carried the same quiet acknowledgement. One night, as she cleaned her station, Vincent spoke without planning to. Anthony believed you were untouched by people like me. Diane did not look up. Belief doesn't make something true. Then what does? Choice. That answer stayed with him. Vincent thought about all the choices he had made to avoid needing anyone. He had framed them as survival, as intelligence, as discipline. But sitting in her studio, stripped of titles and leverage, he questioned whether they had also been avoidance. Not of danger. Of connection. He did not speak of this to anyone. There was no confidant in his life capable of holding it without using it. Instead, he watched Diane continue to exist exactly as she always had, unaffected by his power, uninterested in his reach. He realized then that what he felt was not possession. It was respect. And respect, he understood too late, was far more dangerous. Because respect made him want to protect something he did not own. On his way out that night, he paused at the door. If I cross a line, he said quietly, you'll end this. Yes, she replied without hesitation. He nodded once. Good. As the door closed behind him, Vincent accepted a truth he had spent his life avoiding. For the first time, something in his world existed that he could not control. And he did not want to. 4 days before Christmas, Vincent Wright stepped into the freight elevator alone. The metal doors closed with a dull final sound, and the car began its slow climb. There was no mirror inside, no music, no buttons labeled with names. Just numbers and the faint vibration of old cables pulling upward. He had dismissed his driver 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance through falling snow, coat collar turned up, hands bare. He wore dark slacks, a wool sweater, and a plain coat without markings. No watch worth noticing. No ring. He looked like someone who spent his days thinking rather than commanding. That was deliberate. Tonight, he wanted as little distance between himself and the truth as possible. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto warmth and low light. Diane's studio did not announce itself. There was no sign, no welcome desk, no noise beyond the soft hum of equipment. Brick walls rose around carefully chosen furniture. Nothing new, nothing trendy. The space felt lived in, claimed. A large window revealed the city stretched wide, lights muted by snow, the Willis Tower standing steady in the distance. Diane did not greet him. She stood near her workstation, wiping down metal surfaces with slow precision. She wore black from head to toe. Sleeveless top. Fitted pants. Boots with worn buckles. Her arms told stories he did not ask to hear, ink flowing over muscle and skin with purpose. Her hair was pulled back, face open, eyes sharp. She looked at him once. "You're Vincent Wright," she said. There was no question in it. "Yes." "You came alone." "Yes." That earned a pause. Not approval. Acknowledgement. Anthony usually sent noise ahead of him, she said. People who wanted to be seen. "I didn't," Vincent replied. "I noticed." She gestured to a chair, but did not invite him to sit. Control of space mattered to her. He respected that. "I don't take walk-ins," she said. "And I don't take referrals lightly. Anthony is gone." "I know." She studied his face, not searching for fear or guilt, just alignment. "Then tell me why his name is in your mouth." Vincent reached into his coat and removed a small, worn notebook. The leather was creased, the pages thick with use. He did not hand it to her. He opened it himself. "He wrote about you," Vincent said. "Not your work. You." He read a short passage aloud. Anthony's words were direct, unpolished. He described a woman who demanded nothing beyond payment. Someone who did not trade access for comfort. Someone who stayed exactly where she was, no matter who sat in her chair. When Vincent finished, he closed the book. "He called you the only honest person he knew." Diane's expression did not change, but the room tightened. "Anthony talked too much," she said. "Not about this." Silence held. Vincent spoke carefully. "I'm requesting a long-term project. One design. Multiple sessions. Months, if needed. I don't work exclusively. I'm not asking you to." She lifted a brow. "Then you're asking for priority." "No. I'm asking to be added as a client who respects your rules." "And your money?" "Pays for your time. Nothing else." She stepped closer, close enough to make a point of proximity. "Men like you don't offer privacy without wanting something in return." "That's true." "And protection?" "That's optional." Her eyes sharpened. "There it is." Vincent did not step back. "I won't pretend my world isn't dangerous. But I'm not here to fold you into it. I'm here because Anthony wrote something I couldn't ignore. And that is that you exist near power without bending to it." Diane crossed her arms. "Curiosity gets men killed." "Usually," Vincent agreed. "But this isn't curiosity alone." "What is it then?" He exhaled once. "I want something on my skin that means something. Not a symbol. Not a threat. Something true." She studied him for a long moment. "Here are my rules," she said. "You come alone. You don't ask about other clients. Whatever happens in this room stays here. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your confessor. This stays professional." Vincent extended his hand. She took it. 3 seconds. No more. The contact moved through him like a quiet jolt. "Then we're clear," she said. "Yes," he replied. And for the first time in years, Vincent Wright felt the weight of a bargain he could not dominate. The first session did not begin with a sketch. Diane did not ask him to remove his coat right away. She moved through her space instead, checking drawers, aligning tools, adjusting the height of the chair by a fraction that only she would notice. Vincent remained still, watching without comment. He understood preparation. He recognized discipline when he saw it. "Sit," she said finally. He did. "Before I touch you," she continued, "I need information. Not your resume. Not what you've built. I don't care about that." Vincent nodded once. "I need to know why you're here now. Not last year. Not 5 years ago. Now." He considered the question longer than most people would have tolerated. "Because I'm tired of wearing things that mean nothing," he said. "And because Anthony's words stayed with me longer than they should have." She studied him. "That's not enough." "No," he agreed. "But it's honest." She accepted that without comment. Diane pulled a stool closer and sat, notebook resting on her knee. She did not draw yet. Her pen stayed capped. "Tell me your earliest memory of feeling safe," she said. Vincent blinked. The question landed harder than he expected. "My grandmother's kitchen," he replied after a moment. "Sunday mornings. Radio low. Grease popping in a pan. No one asking me to be anything." Diane nodded, as if checking a box no one else could see. "What sound makes you feel awake?" she asked. "Thunder," he said. "Over water." "What moment would you keep if everything else disappeared?" He hesitated. "Buying my mother her house. The day she realized she didn't have to move again." Diane wrote then. Not words he could read. Shapes. Notes. Anchors. "You'll lie face down for the work," she said. "Upper back. Large piece. Do what you need to do." "I will," she replied. "But understand this, once I start, I don't stop for emotions. If you flinch, breathe. If you want to quit, say so. Don't pretend strength." That caught him off guard. "I don't pretend," he said. She looked at him. "We'll see." Vincent removed his coat and shirt without ceremony. The scars on his skin told a history he did not explain. Diane did not ask. She adjusted the table, gestured him forward, and waited until he settled. Her gloved hands were steady. Professional. When the needle touched skin, Vincent inhaled sharply despite himself. She noticed. "That reaction," she said calmly, "comes from holding too much in for too long." He laughed once, short and surprised. "You say that to everyone?" "No," she replied. "Only when it's true." The machine hummed back to life. Minutes passed. Then more. The pain was precise, controlled. It demanded presence. Vincent focused on his breathing, on the weight of his body against the table. On the fact that for once, he was not directing anything. "You absorb pain without sound," Diane said. "That's not toughness. That's practice." He did not answer. As the session continued, conversation came in fragments. Not confession. Observation. Memory shared without demand. Vincent spoke about his mother's hands, rough from work. About learning to speak carefully so he wouldn't sound out of place in rooms where no one expected him to belong. Diane offered pieces of herself in return. Her father leaving without warning. Her mother coming home exhausted, shoes by the door, silence heavy but familiar. The years when she learned that touch was easier than trust. Neither of them pushed further. When the session ended, Diane cleaned his skin and stepped back. "That's enough for today," she said. Vincent sat up slowly. The design was only a beginning, lines forming something he could not yet recognize. "When do we continue?" he asked. "When you're ready," she replied. And when you respect that this stays exactly what it is. Professional, he said. Yes. He dressed, feeling the quiet weight between them settle rather than strain. At the door, Vincent paused. Thank you. She met his gaze. Payment is fine. He nodded. Still. Thank you. After he left, Diane locked the door and leaned against it for a moment longer than usual. After she returned to her station, she opened her notebook and added one final note beneath the sketch. Not his name. Just one word. Truth. 4 days before Christmas, the consultation became something else. Diane closed the door behind Vincent and set her phone face down on the counter. No interruptions. No outside pull. She did not open her sketchbook right away. Instead, she leaned against the edge of her workstation and studied him with the same careful attention she gave her lines. I already know what you want to look like, she said. I need to know what you feel like. Vincent did not answer immediately. Earliest memory of safety, she continued, steady. Don't think. Just answer. My grandmother's kitchen, he said. Englewood. Morning light through lace curtains. The radio low. No rush. Diane nodded. Sound that makes you feel alive. Thunder over Lake Michigan, he replied. The kind that rolls instead of cracks. What moment would you keep if you could keep only one? He exhaled. Buying my mother her bungalow in Bronzeville. Watching her walk through the rooms like she didn't have to be careful anymore. That was when Diane reached for her book. She sketched without explanation. Lines first. Motion. Shape. She worked fast, confident, stopping only to glance at him as if checking alignment between idea and truth. This won't be decorative, she said. It will be large. It will take time. That's fine. It's a storm, she continued. Over water. Lightning breaking the surface. Shoreline barely visible. Vincent stayed quiet. And in the waves, she added, tapping her pen once, your grandmother. Not obvious. Not a portrait someone else would recognize. She'll be there for you alone. Something in his chest tightened. She died when I was 19. I know, Diane said softly. Loss like that leaves marks whether you acknowledge them or not. He nodded once. The first inking session was scheduled for January 2nd. The city was slower then. Streets half empty. Snow pushed into corners. Diane played Billie Holiday low enough that it felt private rather than performative. Vincent followed her instruction without comment. Shirt off. Face down. Arms relaxed. When the needle touched his skin, his body reacted before his mind caught up. A sharp inhale. A brief tightening through his shoulders. Diane paused. That response isn't weakness. I didn't say it was. I am, she replied. It comes from learning early that reacting didn't change outcomes. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. You say that like you've seen it before. I live with it, she said, and continued. January stretched on, session by session. The design took shape slowly, deliberately. Vincent began to anticipate the rhythm of the work, the way pain sharpened focus instead of dulling it. The way silence could exist without pressure. They spoke in fragments. He told her about the first man he killed. Not the act itself, but the moment afterward. How nothing felt different, and how that absence frightened him more than guilt ever could. He told her about his penthouse, how quiet it became after midnight. About standing in the dark and speaking to photographs because there was no one else who would listen without expectation. Diane did not respond with sympathy. She responded with honesty. She told him about her father leaving without warning. About her mother collapsing in a kitchen that was not hers, hands still wet from someone else's dishes. About learning young that survival required self-containment. February came with heavier work. Longer sessions. More trust. Vincent stopped flinching. Diane stopped guarding every word. One night, as she cleaned the machine, she spoke without looking at him. I decided a long time ago not to let anyone inside, she said. Not because they hurt me. Because I felt myself shrinking to fit them. Vincent stayed still. I need to belong to myself first, she continued. I don't know if I can give someone the kind of merging they expect. He turned his head slightly. I don't want to erase you. That's what everyone says. And that's why you don't believe them. She met his eyes then. Just once. March arrived quietly. The tattoo was nearly finished. Diane worked on the final details of the eyes hidden in the waves, her focus absolute. A strand of hair slipped loose, brushing her cheek. Without thinking, Vincent lifted his hand and moved it away from her face. The machine went silent. The room held its breath. Diane stepped back, pulse visible at her throat. That, she said carefully, is not part of the work. Vincent lowered his hand immediately. I know. The distance between them shifted. Not broken. Opened. After that moment, nothing returned to what it had been. Diane finished the session without another word, her movements precise, controlled. When she stepped back and told Vincent it was enough for the day, her voice carried the same professional calm she had always used. But the air between them felt altered, as if a door had been opened that could not be closed again. Vincent dressed slowly. He did not apologize. He understood that apologies offered too quickly were often attempts to soothe oneself rather than repair harm. I won't do that again, he said quietly. Diane met his gaze. I know. That was what unsettled him most. She did not need reassurance. She trusted her own judgment more than his promises. The next sessions unfolded with heightened awareness. They spoke less, but when they did, the words landed deeper. Vincent found himself measuring his thoughts before speaking, not out of fear but respect. He did not want to crowd her space with need. The work progressed. Lightning gained dimension. Water deepened. The hidden face within the waves took form, its expression neither soft nor hard, but steady. Watching it emerge stirred something in Vincent he had kept sealed for decades. One evening, after a long session, Vincent spoke into the quiet. I don't count people, he said. I count outcomes. That's how I've survived. Diane cleaned her tools. And now? Now I count days, he admitted. Between sessions. She paused, hands still. That's not my responsibility, she said carefully. I know, he replied. I'm not asking you to carry it. She considered that, then nodded once. In late March, as the final details neared completion, the studio became the only place where Vincent felt fully present. His phone stayed off. His guards remained distant. For hours at a time, the man who controlled cities lay still, trusting someone else with his skin. That trust did not go unnoticed. Diane felt it in the way his body no longer tensed when she adjusted her position. In the way he accepted discomfort without bracing for control. In the way he never tested her limits once they were set. One night, after she wiped down the finished section and stepped back, Vincent spoke without planning to. I don't know how to stop thinking about you. The words landed between them without force. Diane did not turn immediately. She finished cleaning the machine, disposed of gloves, and only then faced him. That can't happen, she said. I know what I am, he replied. I'm not asking you to ignore it. You don't get to decide what touches my life, she said, voice firm. Not even by accident. I'm not trying to, Vincent said. I'm trying to understand it. Understanding did not soften her expression. She took a step back, creating space with intention. You need to leave. He did not argue. The following weeks were marked by absence. Vincent buried himself in work with a severity that unsettled those around him. Decisions came faster. Patience thinned. Nights stretched longer. He drove past her building more than once, never stopping, respecting the boundary even as it burned. Diane cancelled sessions. She stared at photographs of the unfinished tattoo, the grandmother's eyes waiting. Her hands itched for work she refused to resume. She told herself this was discipline. She told herself it was necessary. But in quiet moments, she admitted the truth. She had fallen in love. Not with his power. Not with his control. With the man who lay still under her hands and trusted her not to take more than she was given. She asked herself a question she had avoided for years. Could closeness exist without loss? The answer frightened her enough to keep him away. Until one evening in April, when rain pressed against the windows and the studio felt too silent, Diane reached for her phone. She typed a single sentence. "Come finish the session." She sent it before fear could intervene. Vincent arrived exactly on time. Vincent did not ease into the truth. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, standing near the center of the studio, coat still on. "I count the days between sessions. I drive past this building at 3 in the morning just to know the lights are off. I don't know how to stop, and that's never happened to me before." Diane's body reacted before her mind caught up. She took a step back. Then another. Space mattered now more than ever. "You shouldn't be saying this," she said. "I know," Vincent replied. "But it's already here. That doesn't make it acceptable." He did not argue. "I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm telling you because pretending hasn't worked." Her hands curled at her sides. "You know who you are. What you are. I grew up watching men like you destroy entire families without touching them directly. That's not what I want." "It doesn't matter what you want," she said sharply. "It matters what follows." She moved toward the workstation, placing the table between them like a line drawn with intent. "This cannot happen. Not because you're cruel. Because your world consumes everything it touches." Vincent stayed where he was. "I've kept it separate." "So did my father," she said. "Until he didn't come home." The words landed with final weight. "I can't think when you're here," Diane continued. "And I don't make good decisions when I stop thinking." He nodded slowly. "You want me to leave?" "Yes." Vincent turned without hesitation. At the door he paused, not to plead but to ground himself. "I won't come back unless you ask," he said. "That's the line." He left. The weeks that followed were sharp and quiet. Vincent returned to work with a severity that unsettled his closest associates. Meetings shortened. Tolerance vanished. Decisions cut clean and fast. There was no softness left to manage. No space for error. At night, he drove without destination, stopping himself every time instinct pulled him toward her street. Diane cancelled sessions. She told clients she needed time. Her hands felt wrong when she tried to work. She stared at photographs of the unfinished tattoo on her phone, the eyes still incomplete, waiting. Silence pressed in. In it, she admitted the truth she had avoided. She loved him. Not because of his power. Not in spite of it. But because she had seen the man beneath it when he had nothing to gain. Because he had obeyed boundaries without resentment. Because he had stayed still and trusted her not to take more than she was offered. The question that followed terrified her. Could closeness exist without control? She sat with that question for days. Until the answer stopped frightening her. And became necessary. The message arrived on a rainy April evening. Diane's fingers hovered over the keyboard before she pressed send. "Come finish it. Tonight." Vincent stepped out of the cab at exactly 7:30. Water dripped from the shoulders of his coat, streaking faint rivulets down the dark fabric. His expression was measured, careful, but beneath the neutrality, a spark of hope lingered. He did not speak as he followed her into the studio. Words would come later, if at all. The session began without preamble. 2 hours passed in quiet focus. The hum of the machine filled the small room, mingling with the soft patter of rain against the window. Diane worked with precision, completing the grandmother's eyes first, the subtle reflections, the faint lines carrying decades of memory. Lightning swirls traced across the water, shading layered like recollection itself. When she finally leaned back and exhaled, she said simply, "It's done." Vincent turned, tracing the design with his eyes. Each line, each shadow, spoke of loss and love, grief and protection. He understood her work was more than ink, it was the story of someone's life. His life. She set her terms clearly. No appearances together. No introductions to anyone in his world. Her studio remained untouched by security or monitoring she did not request. What existed between them would stay within these walls. Her freedom, her space, remained inviolate. And the final boundary, if he ever attempted to own her, control her movements, her choices, her life, she would vanish entirely. She knew how to disappear. He would not find her. Vincent studied her. He met her gaze with quiet certainty. "I am not here to own you," he said. "I want to love you." Her lips pressed into a firm line. Most men did not understand the difference. Most assumed love was possession. But she recognized in him something rare, a willingness to cherish without domination, to stay present without control. The storm on his back was complete. The terms were clear. And in that clarity, the first fragile trust began to take root. Months passed, and a rhythm emerged between them. Vincent discovered that love could exist without ownership. Diane remained entirely herself, uncompromised, uncontained, and he found a rare beauty in that freedom. The intensity he once equated with control softened into patience. Their shared spaces became private sanctuaries. The tattoo studio remained hers, sacred and inviolate. Weekends found them in a cabin deep in the Wisconsin Northwoods, the world reduced to the sound of wind through pine and the quiet of their own company. Lake Michigan offered another refuge, a modest beach house on its eastern shore, where mornings began with coffee and the horizon spilling light across the water. Evenings were reserved for anonymous dinners in small towns, tables tucked in corners, his face unnoticed, her presence unpressured. Diane's work transformed. The independence that had always defined her flourished alongside vulnerability. Her art became more intimate, each line carrying subtle emotion, stories she never spoke aloud but revealed on skin. Clients began to notice a depth they could not name. One Christmas Eve, gifts were exchanged. Vincent had secured the deed to her building, moving it through untraceable channels. The warehouse, her sanctuary for nearly a decade, now belonged solely to her, untouchable by anyone, including him. In return, she gave him a leather-bound collection of her designs, 17 years of creativity, struggles, and secrets bound together. Every hidden part of herself she had preserved. The meaning of their gifts was clear without words. He offered independence without constraint, requesting only the love she chose to give. She offered transparency without surrender, granting him insight into her most private self while remaining complete and autonomous. Together, they discovered that the truest form of devotion required no chains, only respect, trust, and a willingness to see one another fully. In those quiet moments, away from the city's scrutiny and the weight of his world, they both recognized the rare treasure they had found in one another. A relationship built on choice, not possession, on presence, not dominance, on understanding, not control. Diane and Vincent's story demonstrated a truth often overlooked. Boundaries are not obstacles but the foundation of genuine connection. Her insistence on independence was not resistance. It was clarity, a standard for how she allowed others into her life. Vincent's willingness to honor that boundary marked a transformation deeper than any display of control or power could achieve. True love does not erase identity. The healthiest relationships allow both people to remain whole. Vulnerability is shared willingly, not demanded. Power is not used to dominate but to protect, to create a space where trust can grow. In giving each other freedom, they discovered intimacy without compromise, loyalty without confinement. Some of life's most treasured bonds exist in quiet spaces, away from the eyes of others. Being hidden can be protection rather than shame. Being valued in private can hold more meaning than public admiration. For Diane and Vincent, the world did not need to witness their connection to validate it. The gift of choice and respect proved more enduring than visibility or recognition. Every individual has the right to define intimacy for themselves. Love does not require surrendering your essence, nor should trust be given without discernment. It is possible to open one's heart fully while preserving the parts that define us. By setting terms, by protecting autonomy, people can experience connection without losing themselves. The greatest gift they shared was presence rather than possession, commitment rather than control, acceptance rather than expectation. Love flourished not through transformation demanded, but through acceptance offered. They became better versions of themselves by seeing one another completely and choosing to remain. To viewers, remember this: love that requires losing yourself is not love worth having. Respect your boundaries, honor your independence, and recognize that the healthiest connections are those where both people remain whole. Share your thoughts in the comments, tell us where you are watching from, and subscribe for tomorrow's story that will continue to explore complex, compelling relationships. Your support allows us to bring these powerful, carefully crafted stories to life, giving voice to characters who demand respect, intelligence, and authenticity.